What's up, everybody? Episode 21 of Andrewcast. I'm honored to be here with Ryan Acuna, co-hosting a few episodes with me. And I'm also have Carly Najera, this amazing Philadelphia teacher who's very experienced, won awards, and you were on Preston and Steve, right?
I was, yeah. I won coolest teacher last year.
You won coolest teacher?
Yeah.
And you're
totally rigged.
Totally rigged. Come on, you won coolest teacher. Who rigged it for you?
It was a pity vote.
No,
It really was, but it was nice. It was like I had a rough spring, so it was actually nice to be nominated. And
what happened with that?
The school where I was had like a $20 million deficit, and they cut the arts, and then it was this whole big crazy to do, and then I ended up actually my position got cut, even though I was the head of the department. I was still lowest on the totem pole as far as the art department goes, so my position was eliminated. So I feel like some of the kids were like, hey, let's vote for Miss N.
Really?
But she's kind of pathetic right now.
Whoa.
Yeah.
Oh, come on.
Then that's not out of pity. That's
Yeah,
that's out of their
No,
appreciation.
I know. I think it was I think I might have had a chance, but I think that definitely tipped the scales. Like, I don't think many other teachers weren't, usually I think all the teachers would have been like, vote for me. And everyone just kind of was like, we're going to let Najera have it. Because she just sort of deserves it right now, so.
They must have liked you, obviously, or else they wouldn't even voted for you.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's, as a teacher, that's my strength. Like, I always build relationships with students, so I feel like I did have a weird little following of art kids that, supported me and wanted me to be happy in sort of a hard time for me. So
like a Dumbledore's Army type of thing?
It's absolutely a Dumbledore's Army. It's funny. They were like, actually, it's funny you say that. They were sort of equating me to, when they kicked Trelawney out and she's kind of standing there with her bags. Mm-hmm. That was kind of me. That was kind of me in the spring, like,
oh man,
home, it was like pretty traumatic. But I'm good now. I mean,
Well, I mean,
we'll bounce back.
It's easy to see just by listening to you that you're very passionate about what you do. I mean, is that a fair assumption?
Yeah, I'm super passionate about what I do. Yeah. I think it's so important. And it's kind of crazy because if you would have asked me 10 years ago, would I be a teacher, I would have kind of laughed at you.
Huh.
And it was just, so I got into teaching really kind of through Facebook. An old friend of mine that I grew up and I went to youth group with, church, found me on Facebook, and he posted something that said, looking for any good teachers, and I jokingly said, hey, you want an a weird art teacher? He said, yeah, and I was like, no, dude, I'm kidding, because I was working as a design engineer. I was doing blueprints, floor plans for this design build firm, and I actually really loved my job. I loved my coworkers. I had a little office in a basement with this other guy that we would like blare music, and we did all this stuff together, and it was really fun, and we could take lunch whenever we want, and then he just kept bugging me. He was like, no, seriously, I think you'd be a great teacher. I was like, I don't want to teach,
Yeah, like what's going on here?
Yeah, I have a secretary in an office. Like, why would I want to leave that? And then he was like, well, just come in for the interview. He's like, it might be something that you would be interested in. And so I went in, just kind of so he would leave me alone. And I'm also, was the breadwinner. So I was like, the market was starting to kind of crash, and I was working in like a top market, so like top 1%. That was sort of our clients. But they would put up, $250,000 kitchens, which is kind of hard to fathom. Like I would struggle.
$250,000 kitchen? What? It's like in houses?
Yeah, like they would say, all right, well, we're gonna knock this wall out and put on this addition, and we want the best of everything. We want 3 ovens and $50,000 worth of appliances, but it'd be weird because they wouldn't really be cooking. It would be their help that would cook.
Right.
So you were helping design these kitchens.
So I was helping doing the design work. I was helping do the like the floor plans, like if like a beam had to be moved. So I would do all the drawings, and since I wasn't an architect, I would do all the work and then just give it to an architect to stamp.
Right.
But the market was starting to kind of crash a little bit, and I was like, I'm just gonna go do this interview. So Marcus leaves me alone. And then he started just asking me about education, and I didn't, like halfway through the interview, I just realized, I was like, oh my God, I'm really passionate about this. I really still was trying to be an artist. I really believe in the arts. I believe it saves people because it absolutely saved me in so many ways, which I can get into later if you like.
No, we'll get into that. Don't worry.
And he was like, all right, well, the job is yours if you want it. I need to know by noon tomorrow. And I said, what? Okay. And then I was driving home and I just like had this real, like, I don't know, just like this feeling like, oh my God, I think I should do this. This is crazy. I'm literally going to take a 50% pay cut when we can't afford it. And, you know, I have my son, Rain, and my stepsons were still young and they were over every weekend. So we were pretty poor at the time. But just on the drive home, I was thinking, man, this really matters. You know, when you think about the market I was in, and then you go into North Philly and you see the need for just what I thought, like I was a good person that could help people. It just seemed like, what does money matter? And it does matter. Obviously, it makes everything easier. But I went home and I talked to my husband, who is as goofy as he is. Was like, well, we always figure it out. Like, just do it. So I went into work the next day and I gave my 2 weeks.
Wow.
And then I was in the classroom 2 weeks after that. So total
change of environment. And
leap.
I can totally relate to where you were as far as like, you know, you have this creative partner and you guys just create all day, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And you're going from an environment that's just based on creative production to one that's kind of more rigid, more structured, you know, with teaching. I mean, you can make whatever kind of lessons that you want according to what you have to teach, but like you're totally switching work environments. So like that had to be like just coming out of a pond into like an ocean, or, you know, or was it that, or was it more of like the behavioral aspect of like kids that was kind of different?
Everything's different. I mean, you go from, something simple which you don't think about when you're in a regular office, you can go to the bathroom whenever you want.
Right.
You can't do that.
Oh,
you know, when you're a teacher, if you think about it, like, it's super structured. So if you teach for 3 hours straight, you hold it for 3 hours straight, or you find someone to watch your classroom. You know, you're sort of a parent to 30 other kids, and they come first. Their needs come first, and it doesn't matter. So, like, you learn to ration your water and go before school starts, or, you know, just little things like that. Or, you know, if I didn't feel like packing lunch the night before, I could just drive and go get it. You know, that doesn't work that way in schools.
Right.
Because you have half an hour, and usually, I would say most of the good teachers that I know never really take their lunch, or they're sort of eating while they're
watching everybody, yeah.
Or they're doing something else. So, yeah, it's just more structured, and you go from, for me, it was going from dealing with wealthy people, contractors, engineers, architects, to, you know, kids in North Philly that were undercredited and overaged, meaning they had less than 9 high school credits, but they were 16. So they basically were freshmen when they should have been juniors, credit-wise.
That's tough, because those kids, you know, a lot of them, they have a bad reputation, maybe fairly or unfairly, you know, and maybe a lot of them are more or less, like, maybe less receptive to, like, being taught at that period, because they're like, oh, like, people have put me in this box, maybe I shouldn't listen, like, maybe I shouldn't, you know. How's your experience been with that?
So I think I guess what happens, like, what in my experience anyway, and obviously these are just like all my experiences, and I can't speak for anybody else in education, but what I noticed was most of my students were smart, you know, they were really street smart, but they didn't have the skills to back those things up. So they didn't have the reading skills. So a lot of my students, you know, they're 16, 17, 18, and they're reading at a second grade level. Well, when you read at a second grade level, you don't understand the science textbook. You don't understand the social studies textbook. So then you're delayed in everything. And it's not that they're not intelligent. It's not that they didn't have intelligent ideas. They just couldn't show their intelligence. So they couldn't sort of regurgitate whatever they were supposed to. Or, you know, it's not that they weren't thinking at a high level. They just weren't functioning at a high level. So.
Yeah.
So how do you alter your classroom plan for some of these people or some of these students who can't keep up with where they're supposed to be?
So for me, being an art teacher, it's actually a lot easier because everything can be visual, and everything can be chunked into smaller things. So it's, you know, we do it together, and then you do it. We do it together, and then you do it. And then what I like to do as a teacher is sort of what I call my high flyers, or the kids that really can grasp things. Then they become sort of like mini teachers in the classroom. So
that's cool.
It becomes a community. It becomes, you know, just like, it just feels better when everybody can help one another.
Yeah.
And I think, you know, kids can be rotten.
Yeah, I mean, kids,
but they can be great too.
No, they definitely can be very rotten. But I guess one of my questions is, you're giving them this responsibility, more or less, this responsibility to, you know, help out their fellow students, be a community leader in a way. Do they take up on do they take that up willingly, or is it something you gotta have to nudge them into? Or is it in the middle somewhere?
It depends on personality.
Okay.
And I think for the most part, what, you know, that even if you're 17-year-old thugs, or how kids are labeled with every kind of ridiculous label.
Of course.
They are still kids, you know, their brains are still developing. They want they actually want to please. Like, I think there's this, especially now, there's this idea that kids, especially kids of color, or that grew up in poverty, that they're making all these bad decisions and they want to be bad, and you know, yeah, there's a couple of bad apples, but I think for the most part, kids want to be good.
Right.
They want to do the right thing. They just don't know how. They don't have the skills.
Totally.
They haven't had an example. So I feel like that's the power of teaching, is that, you know, I try to be a good example, or you give them a little, you know, something as simple as, hey, collect my papers.
Yeah.
You know, they especially like right now, I have middle school and high school. My middle schoolers, you know, like the toughest kids, they want to collect the colored pencils. You know, like you just told me you wanted to meet me outside and beat me up. But when I ask for a volunteer, you're the first hand that goes up.
Right.
So they kind of live in this weird dual reality where,
of course,
I have to be on the streets, but I want to collect Miss Najera's colored pencils.
Yeah.
For positive reinforcement and feedback. Like, it's...
No, listen, I mean, it makes sense if you really think about it. Like, if you think back to when you're a young person, when you're around young people who are your peers, you know, I think a lot of the angst that comes from being a preteen and a teenager is that you're fighting to express yourself, but you don't fully know how yet.
Yeah.
And so you're caught in this dichotomy of, like, what is cool to other people and what is productive for you to do in your own personal life. And of course you can understand that. You hit it around the head. Like, their brain is still developing. Yeah. But it's just so great that, you know, you are an art teacher, because that happens to be the class where people can kind of put aside conventions and really go about honestly expressing themselves, or at least taking steps to do that, you know, because you probably have open-ended assignments, I'm guessing, where it's just like, maybe, I don't know, draw something meaningful to you, or that's like a very elementary one, but like, is there anything like that you've noticed, like unique responses with these kind of kids, like the stuff they draw really gives them maybe insight into what's going on?
Well, what I think that in the way I've changed my teaching over the years is that I would definitely do a lot of assignments that way. Yeah. And then I realized that a lot of my students were getting super frustrated because they didn't have the skill.
Oh, okay.
So I sort of balance, you know, we'll do a project based on skill level first, and then sort of a more personal, independent outcome of things. The way that I plan curriculum, because I write curriculum too.
Nice.
You know, like I would say, like the younger kids, like 9th grade, like I really understand high school more than like the lower grades. You know, like 9th grade, you really have to be structured because they still aren't ready. Like some of the kids are ready, but for the most part, they want to be told what to do, and then you give them you give them a little leeway within your projects, and then the goal is, you know, I taught AP last year, is that by the time they're seniors, that they don't really need you, that they feel good about everything that they can do, and they can take everything they've learned over the years and applying it in their own way. And I think there is this misconception about art education, is that, well, I had kids like, well, I didn't take art because I'm not good at art. And I said, well, you had to take algebra. You didn't know algebra when you started.
Exactly.
You know, there is a skill level, and it can be fun, and you can sort of work around the things you can't do. Like, I have kids that are just brilliant with color, but they couldn't render something and draw it from life to save, you know, for anything.
Yeah.
But that's okay. I mean, everybody's different. Everybody has different skills, and you can build your skills in making art. And if you enjoy it, who cares? But I think especially middle school and some of high school, mostly middle school, they're so hyper aware and sensitive of the peers in the classroom that if they're not good at something, it's just super magnified for them.
Mm-hmm.
If I can't draw a straight line, everyone's gonna think I'm stupid.
Like
and it's like, but that kid is trying to draw a straight line too, and that kid, like, nobody cares about your line, dude. Like, just draw it, you know?
Exactly.
So do you feel in the Philadelphia school districts, it's almost like they all feel like they have a magnifying glass on them? Or
I think that's just the age group, though. I think that's
just the age group, okay.
I think it's middle school in general. You know, I mean, it's definitely, in my experience, urban education and suburban education are like two completely different jobs because the needs are so different.
And what exactly do you mean by those needs?
So I would just, like the students that I serve now are all from North Philly. They're 100% in poverty. They're all minorities, and they seem like they need a lot more. They need a lot more structure, and I don't know why that is, and I don't know if that's just my school, and the students from the neighborhood that I'm with, but I didn't experience that so much in the suburbs. It was definitely different structures. It just feels different. Like things that I tried when I went back into the city this year, that I would have had no issue with the past 6 years. Like I basically had to start from scratch this year because none of it worked, and really? I had to build up to letting the kids be more independent. You know, I mean, I don't feel like I'm a great teacher this year. I'm just not where I should be. I'm not where I was last year because I was used to Ben Salem kids, because I kind of forgot how North Philly kids are.
Yeah.
So you get into a routine, and then it's almost just like once you have to switch out of it.
Yeah.
It's frustrating because you're like, this is working for me. Why isn't it working now?
I think it's just different expectations, and a lot of it is the age group. My high school kids, I feel like my high school kids that I have this year are pretty much what I would expect my high school kids in the suburbs to have been. They haven't had art every year, so their skills aren't as refined, maybe. But their ideas are still there, and they still want to take art. And in my school, it is an elective, so they were able to choose it. Which I think, student choice makes all the difference. In middle school, it is a state law that they have to have art. So I get every 8th grader, whether they want art or not. And I
didn't
think
know
that's
that.
what there's, yeah.
It's interesting.
Do you like you said you like in high school how it's just an elective, so you don't. It's almost like in 8th grade they all get exposed to art, they can decide if they like art or not at that point, and then they can take it up in high school if they like. Right. You think that's better? Well,
student choice matters, obviously. It's just proven. It's like a fact, Okay. Like if you're forced to do something you don't want to do, you're going to be resistant. You're not going to.
Almost always.
Yeah.
I know that's how I'm like.
There's disorder. There's disorders named after it. It's called oppositional defiance disorder.
Hey, dropping knowledge. There you go.
But I also feel middle school is just such a weird age. Like there's some kids that are just like totally ready for high school, and there's some kids that just really still need recess. Actually, I think everybody. I need recess.
In one form or another, right? It doesn't have to be going outside.
You need a break. But I think it's good because it does expose them, and I definitely have kids this year, even though they like hate my class in some ways, they like it because it's a way for them to unwind, and I probably will have them when they're older and they're more mature. So I think in some ways it's good to make everybody try stuff. I'm sure Rain.
For those of you who don't know, me and Carly go way back. Her son is one of my best friends. I've known her since I was like 15. She's basically second mom to me. So yeah, Rain is her son.
Yeah, when I say Rain, I mean my son. He'll probably tell you, like, I was always like, try, you gotta try everything, because he's pretty funny, and he's always like, I hate this.
Yeah, he likes to think he's funny.
Yeah, he hates everything, but I was like, well, you just have to keep trying stuff.
That's what a good parent does.
And eliminate those things. Eventually, you'll like something, or like me, I didn't really. I went to my undergrad degree was in fine arts. I did the teaching thing just in case. I didn't really want to be a teacher. Yeah. I really didn't. I just had no plan on being a teacher, and then I tried it, and I liked it, It's like a Yo Gabba Gabba song. Try it if you like it, Right. But, so you don't know what you don't know, so you just kind of have to try things.
Well, can we just go back real quick to, you were working for this company for these these high-end kitchens, and you just made a jump. And I remember, Facebook was a thing back then. It's in its early stages, but I will never forget what was I like? It must have been like 15 at the time, something young. And you made this post about how you were just taking the dive and how you were just going for it. Mm-hmm. And, I just remember all the support, and I didn't understand the gravity of it back then. Yeah. I didn't really understand what you were doing or how impressive that was to just walk away from something that you've been doing, something that is paying well, something that you don't hate it. You get to go to lunch, and you get to make your own schedule, and as long as work's done, things are good. And for some reason you just decided, hey, like, I'm going this way. And my question is, like, what was the deciding factor? Because you just said on the drive home you went to this interview, and then you were driving home and you're just like, wow, like, I'm doing this. Like, what do you think swayed you? When it was almost like you're like right on the line.
Right. Well, I think it's a lot of things. I think part of it was, it just felt like the right thing to do. And I think I was raised that way. Mm. You've met my parents. Mm-hmm. My parents are super supportive and amazing. And I think that, which is actually, I can almost tie this back to my current, or any students really. When you feel secure and loved, and there's, that if you really fail, like I know if I really fail that I could go home. Not that I would even, not that I would want to. Mm-hmm. If I lost everything, I still have people that love me.
Right.
And would support me. I still love my husband. He's my partner, and he was supportive too, and said, we'll figure this out money-wise, we'll do it. So I had like a really great support system, and everything in my life that's ever been difficult. I know that I have people that love me. Like my brother is the complete opposite of me. Totally introverted, very strange child.
Very interesting guy.
He is a very interesting guy, but like I also know that if I broke down in like the middle of wherever in like Ohio, I could text him and be like, hey, come pick me up in Ohio, and he'd be like, okay. For sure. Do you know what I mean? Like I have people like that in my life where I'm able to fail, and I also have enough grit and wherewithal and love that I feel confident that I can push through things. Where I think, sometimes kids or anybody, they don't always feel that way. I think sometimes when you come from complete poverty, you have to make it. You can't go home. There is no home to go to. Yeah,
exactly.
I have
it's like a fire under your butt almost, like sink or swim.
You might not have a home. You might not have parents. Your parents could be in jail. You might be in a foster home. My husband experienced that last year. He was like trying to help this student, and he just was like trying to track her down, and she was couch surfing, and she had run away from her foster home, and it's just like, my God,
Yeah, how do you deal with that as a teacher?
You just, I think the biggest thing, especially with my current students, or any student, is you just consistent, you're there. I think that really matters. What, like maybe somebody, like my son, might have taken for granted because he had other people at home that loved him, where, I've had students, and I'm thinking of one girl in particular that I won't mention because she would be embarrassed, but
of course.
When she graduated, she was like, Ben Salem has been my home for 4 years. It's the only consistent thing she's ever had in her life. And I was like the one person that was consistent. Like I, would bring her food and check up on her. I actually just invited her to Thanksgiving, even though she never says yes. Mm-hmm. But I think schools for a lot of kids, it becomes their home. And
totally.
She's fine now. But it's just she didn't have that. She didn't parents were addicted.
Addicted to what?
Heroin.
Okay.
She was in foster homes with her whole life. You would never know. I mean, she
puts on a face and just goes out into the world.
She's smart. She's beautiful. She's in college. She's great. So
she's
totally
making
scrappy.
it work. She's
making it work. But I mean, she's a rare case. I mean, I remember one of my first students I had 9 years ago now. I mean, it was my first school I worked at was an accelerated program. So it was, you could basically get your degree in 2 years. So it was basically 16 to 20-year-olds. And he had been there for 3 years. I'm like, dude, you could have just went to regular school. But it took him so long, and then something clicked, and he finally got it together. Two of my students, which were his best friends, were killed that school year. But something in him clicked, and he like finally got it together and pulled it together, and he ended up with straight A's his last marking period,
Nice.
and it was like such this amazing thing. But then, you know, he had nowhere else to go. You know, his neighborhood was his life. His neighborhood was his family. He couldn't get out, you know, and I'm still like looking for him. I can't find him because I still keep in touch with some of the students that graduated that year. But
So do you almost feel like he was pulled back into his environment?
Yeah.
You know, like it's like he had all the ability, but for whatever reason he had to stay.
Yeah. I just, you know, if you don't have that little extra push or just one more person in your life that says like, no, go do this. I still wish I would have helped him more, but I didn't know what I know now.
Right.
But I think it's incredibly hard, you know, like like I said, your block is your family, and you know, what you you know, it's like, and he told me, he's like, his friends would make fun of him. Like, oh, you think you're smart now? You got your high school diploma, you know?
Yeah.
So it's almost a negative thing.
It's like a shameful thing.
Yeah.
For him it was anyway. It was a shameful thing, and I don't know where he is.
Exactly.
Last I heard, he was sort of like on the run, and that was sort of it. So.
But
it's a completely different world. Like it's hard for you to understand, and unless you're in it, it's hard for anyone to understand. You know.
Yeah.
And I think, you know, I'm only speaking from observation, but as a teacher, as an educator, there's only so much you can help, right? And but your heart goes out, and I think that's part of being a good educator is definitely wanting to help in other aspects because you truly do care about your students. But ultimately, you know, the world that they are in, school is a part of that world, of course. And it's a kind of a formative part, right? Like you just were talking about, you kind of get a break from the norm when you go to school. And people react either one of two ways. You know, some people are like, I'm so confined. And other people are like, you know, I'm in now this social hierarchy that maybe I can explore a little bit of it and see like where it takes me. And other people are like, you know, this is not who I am, and some people are like, this is who I am now. So people identify and disidentify with school, you know, and in different ways that we can't account for. And it's, you know, it's tough to see the outcome of that if it's not one that, you know, that you think would be beneficial for them. You know, your heart goes out.
Yeah, you can't help people that don't want to help themselves, and you can't help people that like can't accept the help, because a lot of times trauma is what's comfortable to them.
Yeah.
I forget the book that I read, something along those lines, but it's like, you know, you want to be close, and I think that's what's hard for me. I'm so used to being able to get close to my students like that.
Right.
But the students I'm used to being with can accept that love. Where the students I have now, they flat out told me, like, we were trying to get you to quit for 2 months because they just wanted to. And they did. I mean,
it's heavy.
Yeah, can you talk about what they did to you?
Sure.
Like, I remember you telling me the story.
Yeah, they just. Well, I guess the past 2 years they've had like 4 or 5 art teachers.
And this is at the new school.
This is the new school.
Okay.
In North Philly, so they just saw their idea of an art teacher was that they've only had women. You know, that they were going to be over emotional and not expect anything, and I don't think this is true. Art teachers
with you, they're expecting this of you.
Well, that was their experience.
Okay.
For, you know, and that teachers leave, like people that care about me leave, they don't stay. I mean, that is what traditionally has happened to my students. So they would go out of their way to make sure that they knew that they didn't want me there, even though I kind of knew they did. Or not respect what I had to say, or any of my rules, or any of the boundaries. You know, I got called a dickhead the other day, twice.
You can say what you want on the show, yeah.
And I was like, really, a dickhead? Like, a lot of things, but I'm not that. But he like really was like angry at me, and you know, one student, you know, I was all I wanted him to do was do his work and earn his points for the day.
Right.
And he was so angry, and I'll see you outside, and I better not catch you outside. So there's like a lot of stuff like that, and it's posturing. A lot of it's posturing.
Right.
A lot of it's, you know, because, you know, where I could be like, hey, sit down, you know, to a student and say their name, and they would sit down, where sometimes when I say that now to certain students, they feel like I'm calling them out, so they feel it's like a challenge, so they
have to rise to that.
Instead of taking the redirection and understanding that it's, for me, it's coming from a place of love, like, you're not passing my class. You want to play basketball on Saturday? Freaking do the worksheet I gave you, dude.
Totally.
Like, because you still have to do the work, whether you like it or not. Like, I'm not really flexible about kids being successful, and they know that. Like, you don't have to make a perfect piece of art, but you got to do what I give you. Right. You can't sit there.
Well, you're being practical with them. You know
yeah,
what I'm
like believe me. Do you think sometimes I tell them do you think I want to be here right now? Like, no offense, I'm tired.
Yeah, you just called me a dickhead. Clearly I don't want to be here.
Not having the best day here.
Yeah, so I'm a human too, and I try to be real with the kids that way, no matter what age. Like, listen, man, there's some days where it's really hard. Like, I really just want to stay home.
Of course.
Mm-hmm. Well, and I don't, and I come in and I do my job, and I'm here and you're here, and we have something to do.
Right.
And then after we do what we have to do, then we can talk about it later. But, they had anyway. Sorry, off tangent. So they were like really super aggressive.
To you, yeah.
They wouldn't listen, and then sort of after, like, probably like right after October, it was like a total
change.
180. It was where they would go out of their way to try to make me look bad when like a boss would come in the room. Now when a boss comes in the room, they all would make sure they're like, great.
Rocking.
Yeah.
They're just like, yes, because I didn't leave. Mm-hmm. No matter how hard they try to push me out, I tell them I care about them. Mm-hmm. I tell them I believe in them. Like, I do that corny thing that I feel like adults would be like, shut up and get out of my face. Yeah. But I'm like, I don't care. I'm like, I'm going to believe in you until you believe in yourself. And, they get so mad at me. Mm-hmm. But that actually matters to them.
Right.
And it's not just a line. I really believe that. But I feel like if I went around and said that to, like, college students, they'd be like, all right, lady.
Yeah,
keep it moving. Like, it's BS,
They would see it as hokey, like you're kind of like this motivational, like over the top person. Yeah. But I think from what you're saying and what I'm gleaming is that you've kind of earned their respect because you treated them more like adults than you did students. I feel like the students that get talked down to, like, you shouldn't do that, blah blah blah, or this and that, like, instead of being rational like you're doing, like, hey, like, if you want to play basketball, you gotta do the work. Yeah. Like, I'm not gonna budge on that. And because you're setting these guidelines and you're treating them like adults and you're giving them like an adult agenda, I feel like you're earning their respect that way, as opposed to talking down to them because, like, they're younger. You know what I'm saying? Even though, like, they're pushing your buttons. Like, what's your strategy for dealing with somebody that? Because I think that's the number one thing that teachers come up against is somebody who is just resisting, like hard resisting. Like, I will not.
I mean, a lot of it is just. Like I said, you can't make somebody do it, but all I can do is, I have, like, this year anyway, I have a really strict point system. You earn 10 points a day just for being on task. Every time I redirect you, you lose a point. And I'm honest with them, you just threw a pencil at somebody, you lost a point. Yeah. And then their behavior starts to affect their grade. And, I think that's one thing teachers, it's hard to do because it's so much work. Right. But you have to, like, put weight to everything that they do.
Consequence for every action.
Consequence, but also, hey, you did your work. You're going to get a grade for that. There's not, I had you do 20 things, and I'm only going to give you credit for one. That's not fair. Right. And I think, all the teachers I work with now are seriously amazing. Like, I'm really impressed by them. But I think what does happen is, there are bad teachers.
Yeah, story's out.
Yeah. there are bad teachers, and I think, you know how it is. Like, you could have 20 good teachers and you have one bad teacher, and that teacher's the one that sticks in your mind.
Yeah, we as humans, we're just drawn to negativity. I don't know what it is. Just it's eye popping.
Also, the teacher that is the overlord, like the bitter teacher that doesn't want to be there. Yeah. That's the teacher that the students congregate against to defeat. They're all in agreement that, like, we don't like this person. I know initially it might have been like that with you, but you won their respect. Yeah. But for that teacher, like, it's always like it brings them together. Like, it makes friends out of them. They're like, at least we got to deal with this person.
Can we go back to that moment for a second? Just like when you said they overtly said to you, "Yeah, we were trying to get you to leave." Am I right in saying that? Like, there was just a day when they said that, and they're just like, kids, they're just like, you're cool now. Like, what was that moment like for you?
They said that, and I honestly, like, so my way of coping with things is humor, and I just started laughing. I said, well, I have bills to pay. I'm not leaving.
Yeah, I'm not going anywhere. I'll say the same thing.
I said, I'll be here past when you leave.
Exactly.
And or, a couple of kids, like, said stuff. Like, or that they saw I was upset. Like, the older kids would be like, "Are you gonna leave?" And they're like, they still ask me that all the time. Like, if I'm having a bad day, I'm like, I'm not leaving, guys. Like, relax. But that's what they expect, which is actually really sad. Mm-hmm. And that an art teacher would actually mean that much to them. I had some great teachers that I loved and I cared about, but like I said, my support system was my family.
Right. But that's basically what I was gonna say. Like, it almost seems like a good teacher, it doesn't matter the subject. It just matters, like, what they did to you as a person, you know, how they helped you grow as a person. And, you know, that can be in a subject. You know, that can be in algebra or art or, you know, biology. But really, you know, how do they help you grow into who you want to be? You know, make you believe you can be that person, which seems like you do that.
I think that's the power of art education, too, is that, you know, I'm not bound by tests. I'm not bound by all the bureaucracy and the textbook nonsense, you know, where you have to take the state test, and it's because you can only buy this one type of textbook, and that's because they were friends of Bush. Like that. Mm-hmm. That's where the whole like Common Core math ridiculousness came from.
What do you mean?
It was like a profit center. That? So, I guess about 10 years ago, when No Child Left Behind started, they sort of rolled out this math program that was everybody had to adopt. So like a lot of it was like, if you want federal funding, you have to make sure your kids can like pass this math test, and the only way to pass this math test is to purchase this curriculum, and you can only purchase this curriculum from this publisher, and this publisher had political ties.
So they're making
so like I mean that's like the biggest thing in education, and what's a lot of people don't really talk about is that most people, unfortunately, see students as profit centers, because there is tons of money to be made, and that was definitely something that's happened in the past 10 years with all the charter booms. Now I work in a charter now that is not like your typical charter. I was in public school all this time, and I was, you know, I'm very pro public school. You know, I believe in public school. I believe in the teachers. I believe that it serves everybody. And I was sort of forced to just sort of take a job this year, because I didn't find out till later, and it ended up being a charter school. And I was really upset about it, because I felt like, oh my God, I'm working for the enemy. You know, charter schools drain public schools.
Is that the mentality between public and private? Is there almost like a line divided between the teachers that work at the respective schools?
Sort of, because, and it's not the teachers though. It's the people that are running schools. So charters get funding. So you know how like funding works for schools, right? So there's federal funding, and then there's state funding. And Pennsylvania is like one of the lowest states to get federal funding, and that's a whole nother podcast or whatever. But like you get funding from your district. So like say Ben Salem, for example, their taxes and other things pay for their schools. So if you live in a wealthier area where the taxes are high and people have money and they have, you know, $4 million homes, obviously those taxes on those homes and those properties are going to be more than, say, North Philly Row home. So there's like a bigger pool of money to collect from. But what happens with charters, so like what's happening in Ben Salem now is that there is a charter in Ben Salem, and it sort of had to open. Like I don't know the exact law, but I know that they basically had to say approve a charter. So money follows the student, at least in Pennsylvania. I know that. So say like, as a student, you're worth $5,000.
Okay.
All right, and then say
that sounds pretty nice.
It's actually more than that. It's a lot. And say like special ed students cost almost twice as much. So if you're labeled as a student that has dyslexia or ADHD or anything that will label you to have what's called an IEP, an individualized education plan, you cost $10,000 to educate. So you say you go to the public school, so that's $15,000. You know. But
they cost $15,000.
So $5,000 for you.
Both of those students.
Yeah, so $5,000 for you, $10,000 for you.
Okay.
You decide. Your parents say, I don't like this school for whatever reason, or they think the grass is greener, which it never is. Public and charter schools, the data's skewed. Whatever. So you go.
Whoa,
so your parent. I'll get to that.
Okay. Yeah.
Your parents take you and they send you to charter school. So now your $10,000 that was originally coming to the public school is now going to the charter school.
Okay.
So that's sort of how charters work. So I guess you have to quote me on that because I'm saying it live, but I believe like the charter school in Ben Salem cost the Ben Salem Township $10 million
because it's taking away that profit.
That money the students that the tax money that was collected for those students are now going to be reallocated to the charter school, so they can pay their teachers and their health insurance or whatever benefits they offer, and whatever they need to run to pay their bills. So that's sort of what happens. So what has happened traditionally, like why everybody hates Betsy DeVos, is because she sort of clued in on that and started sort of opening these schools and skewed data that said our schools are better for kids. We do this, we do this, we do this. When in actuality, they haven't really shown any data that shows kids do better on tests in any kind of charter school. And they also can, so most charters, but not the one I work for, they say, like, well, we don't want IEP students. We don't want your kids because it costs more to educate them, because they need specialized attention. They need smaller class sizes because that's the law. So it becomes a magnet school. So you only are taking the best of the best. So if you're only taking the best of the best kids, of course your numbers are going to look better because you're not actually educating everybody. So you're sort of being, you're discriminating, basically. Like, if you're a private school, you can say, like, we don't want kids in wheelchairs because we don't feel like building a ramp and making sure all the doors are ADA compliant, because that would cost money. So you can say we don't want your student, where public school has to take everybody.
Interesting.
You have to take everybody. So where my charter school, so I'm a Mastery charter, and I actually, before I got there too, I heard like terrible things about them, so I was really nervous. But the teachers I work with are amazing, and I feel...
What do you think makes them amazing?
Well, they run themselves like a public school. Like, for instance, we just got 3 students from Puerto Rico their house was destroyed. They have nowhere to live. So their aunt got full custody of them because they're basically just down in Puerto Rico. So they came in. They're from our catchment, so that would be like our neighborhood. So we didn't turn them away. And they don't speak any English. So we're, like, my principals are struggling to, like, get them services. They have actually having somebody come in to help them with their English. Like, I offered to have them in my class because it's easier to translate, you know, when they're doing visual things. I'm not asking them to write essays. So we just accept everybody. It's not a lottery. So a lot of the charters are lottery. You know, you have to wake up. Even Ben Salem is a lottery.
Yeah, I know totally. The Philadelphia Charter School, or Charter School of Philadelphia, I think it's called.
There's tons of charter schools.
Oh, man. That shows how much I know.
No, there's... when I was in Ben Salem High School, it was the exact situation you just described. It had literally... It was the most... That's like the most diverse high school that I've known. You know? And, like, you have people that can't speak English.
Yeah.
You have disabled, you know, you have all types of students, like all types.
And I would say Ben Salem students are amazing in the fact that I never once saw bullying of kids that weren't, like, able-bodied, or, you know, like the really low-level kids. Like, I mean, because art class are inclusion classes. So say you have a student that's nonverbal and is really aggressive, and they have, you know, say they're labeled with a really low IQ.
Right.
You know, they're not going to be sitting in AP, you know,
of course,
physics.
No.
But art classes are inclusive, so they would be sort of secluded for most of the day, but then they would get their socialization in art.
Right.
So I've had all kinds of kids, and I would say that, like, never once did I ever in 6 years ever hear a Ben Salem student ever make fun of them, or if anything, they really went out of their way to be loving and kind and patient. And I almost was like, would be worried for the kids that weren't able-bodied or whatever, because I'm like, man, this is like a really rare situation. When you go somewhere else, it's probably not going to be this.
I think that's the trend. Over the years of school, bullying has actually gone down. It's actually less at a point now than it has been. You know, I mean, we hear a lot about it, and it's still a very prevalent issue. But it's definitely not as prevalent as it was like 20 years ago, 30 years ago in schools.
Is the issue.
Yeah, that's the new thing. And that's, you know, that can range, you know, that sometimes that's very severe and sometimes it's very light harassment. You know, there's different degrees of what is considered cyberbullying. That's such a complex issue. But as in, like, in-school behavior, like, just doing, like, something disrespectful to kids physically or stuff like that, that's at an all-time low.
The internet's just a new frontier. You know, it's almost like the new Wild West. You know, it's ever expanding. Everyone's finally starting to get on board and just realize we still don't understand the power of the internet. I think just the advent of news sources recently have shown how powerful it is. You know, it's, you know, possibly could sway elections. You know, like that's yeah. I mean, I think it did too. I think it did too. But it's the fact is that there's just so many sources now, and it's like, so we're wrapping our heads around trying to verify these sources. You know, it's like something comes out, and we're prone to just believe the headline. You know, this is how we're built. You know, we're built to get that information as fast as we can and then move on. I mean, I know I'm guilty of it too. Sometimes I read headlines and I just, you know, I'm like, oh wow, and then I move on. You know, because I just, like, at that point I don't have time to read the article.
Well,
and
yeah, man. I mean, that's what the internet is. It's just everything all the time. Those are like the two words that describe it. But has anyone ever tweeted about you at schools? Has anyone ever, like, any student tweeted about you? Yeah.
No, I don't think so. I mean, if they did, I wouldn't know. I wouldn't care, and I think that's why they would never do it. Because I would just like wouldn't pay any attention.
Yeah.
I think for the most part, my students like me, even my new ones. I think I've only had only time I've ever had like a weird thing with a student was I had some kid last year actually asked to be pulled from my class, and I've never had that, and I was like really upset. And then it turns out he was literally like he was like a sociopath, and
clearly, because who wouldn't want to be in your class?
I was like, see, only the crazy kids don't want to be in my
Was
class.
that the one that threatened you?
Oh no.
Okay.
No, this was last year, but he ended up like stealing a car and like doing all this crazy stuff last year, and I was like, but the weird thing was that he actually had some talent, and I went up to him and was like, and he was new, and I was like, oh, I could really work with you, like I'm gonna like talk to your mom, and I could like we could do this, and I like showed interest in him. And he just, that like, freaked him out because I don't think an adult ever really did that to him. So he wanted out of there ASAP. Like, he was like, this lady is not going to, like, get to me or, and then he started acting out, like, crazy in school.
Wow.
And I know that he asked to be out of my class because he knew I could see through him.
Wow.
And he, like, did not want anybody to be close
to
to him.
Yeah, what was going on.
They say that you don't accept the love you deserve. You expect you accept the love you're used to.
Yeah. His parents are really nice. I just think he was just, I don't know, a little off, like, he had some, like, legal issues, but, I mean, kids will say things to be hurtful,
Of course. The reaction, that's it, and they're just throwing something at you.
And I feel like kids that have trauma in their life, they want to traumatize you because that's what they know.
Totally. They want to see how you react and compare it to their own reaction.
And it's street rules, like, it's, that's how they relate to each other. Like, they find each other's weaknesses and they pick on it.
Yeah.
And so they'll like look for they'll like actively look for your weakness to try to see if they can break you down.
I think it's fair to say that male students, it's more common in male students than female students.
I just think I think
how
urban kids. I hate to say urban kids.
Is there a difference?
Say what you want to say. Use whatever term.
Do you find a difference in the way that male and female students do that to each other, like try to break each other?
Yeah, I do. I mean, especially young boys. Like my 8th grade boys are really rotten to each other sometimes, and it'll start out in fun and in jest, and I have to like stop it because I know where it's gonna go. Then I mean literally the other day it
turned into a whole roast.
It ended up it's worse than a roast, and like sometimes they're like kind of funny. So, like,
sometimes you gotta keep yourself from laughing.
Like.
There's probably a million moments every day where you feel like laughing, but you can't.
It was like some kid was like, this kid Najera was like, yo, Sharif, your nose looks like an elbow. And I don't know why I thought that was so funny. And I was like, no, he doesn't.
If you laughed, it would have been over. That's what's crazy, though. If the teacher laughs, it's a wrap.
Yeah, it's totally over. But then, like, things will escalate,
Yeah.
And that sort of happened with 2 kids the other day. Like, a boy said something to a girl and sort of made fun of her hair. And then within, like, 3 seconds, her glasses got slapped off of her face, and then she threw a chair at him.
That's another question.
I mean, I didn't even get across the room in time to be like, stop being mean to each other. It was like,
we can't.
It just goes from 0 to 60.
At that point, you're calling somebody in for these people.
I'm like, oh my god, you threw a chair. I was like, oh, I didn't even like drink my coffee.
I literally turned my back for 1 second.
That escalated quickly, as they say.
Yeah, I mean, that's always like that. But then, what's actually even crazier is that a lot of the students were just used to that violence. So they acted like I was traumatized. I mean, I was like, oh my god, you just like literally knocked a kid out with a chair, and the kids were like, he deserved it. I was like, no, nobody deserves to get hit.
That's an eye opener to the reaction, though, right?
Yeah,
it's just like, whoa.
It's just like no big deal. Or something that was really a struggle for me in the beginning of the year was that I didn't realize how strict I had to be and the tone that I had to take with the kids. Where you have to be, and what I would consider just cruel, like just like a total asshole, and that doesn't feel good. Because you feel like, oh my god, these kids really deserve love and respect, and they can't accept it, but you also have a job to do, and you have to run your classroom. So I've just noticed myself getting like no, that's it, like raise my voice, super bitchy, that's it, this is how it's going, and they just love it. But there are days when I just go home and it's really upsetting. It's really upsetting to kind of, I want to say I treat them like shit because that's not. But,
no.
but to be like if.
But you had.
But if I had done that in a different setting or in a different school, I wouldn't have a job. Or if someone had spoken to my children that way, they would never speak again.
Totally.
You would destroy them.
Yeah, I mean, I can't imagine, especially like my daughter Clementine. She's 6. You know, she's so sweet. You know, if you look at her wrong, she cries.
Oh.
You know what I mean? Like if somebody spoke to her that way, she would wouldn't even know how to handle it. So.
You feel bad for being strong with them, but it's what you gotta do.
I feel bad. I feel bad that some of them culturally just expect that aggression. It's not. I guess I mean, who's for me to say what's fair and not fair? But I just feel like it's not fair because you can be a kind person and still be successful in society. You know, you don't have to always be hard. You don't always have to do those things. But I don't live that life. Like I'm not around violent people. Like I've made it a point to not be around those kind of people my entire life. So, you know, and I did the other day. I was like leaving work and I just had, you know, I just reflect all the time because that's what you should do. And I was just thinking like all the things I had said that day and like how my classes went, and I was like I wouldn't have imagined that I would be that at the beginning of the year and how strict I had to be and how structured and everything. And then I didn't even think about it. Like I realized it didn't feel bad to me anymore because I was used to being that way, and that, you know, there was like a little twinge of sadness that oh my God, my heart's cold, like the Grinch is like shrinking down.
Well, it's almost Christmas time. Great for it to grow.
It'll grow again.
But in actuality,
do you do any holiday stuff during the classroom?
Well, I used to. So, I loved my AP class at Ben Salem. I had AP Studio, and it was sort of like a thing where my whole thing is like you're part of, like once you're in my class, you're part of the art family. I call you my art babies.
Sweet.
So dumb.
No, you're starting a culture.
That's not dumb.
Art baby culture.
That's not dumb. That's why I got voted coolest teacher.
It was like a thing, so that like every Thanksgiving, we would do a Thanksgiving feast. So everybody would bring something. So like last year, one kid brought 10 pounds of mashed potatoes, and everybody brought something, and we just put out you know, that craft brown paper, and we'd put all the tables together and lay it out, and everybody would write what they were thankful for about each other, and we'd have like a Thanksgiving meal together, and that was sort of like a highlight for kids.
Yeah, I mean, you know what? Like they're gonna remember that. You know,
yeah,
that's
like
a story
bunch of kids
tell.
this year from Ben Salem were like text me like, remember last year we had Thanksgiving, and they had to come up with their own tree every year. So one year, like a bunch of kids put together like bamboo and wrapped it with lights, and then someone snuck a picture of me and like making like an awful embarrassing face, and they put me at the top as like the star with this like mean mug. So I've done stuff like that where I'm gonna try to do something with my students for like the winter break. I wasn't there yet for Thanksgiving with the behavior and things. I just couldn't like pull some, like my students now need tons of structure, so to be like, hey, we're gonna have a turkey, it would be like total mayhem.
Oh yeah.
So with my seniors this year, I kind of talked to some of them. I'm like, what if we did like, I just really love the idea of sitting down with my students and having a meal because I obviously love food, and I don't know. I think there's something really powerful in that. You know, I mean, even I was such a young mom with my son. I was 16 when I had him. But it was really important. Like I really tried to have dinner with him, and sit and have a meal. And I do that with Clementine. It was a big part of my life growing up. I mean, I know I don't look like it, but I was an athlete, so I was always like running off to some sports practice. But my mom made me sit down and eat, and it was just like really important to me.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of my students, no matter where they're from, they don't get that anymore.
Right.
Do you think that's what you know brings you towards education? It's like you are able to extend this kind of relationship, this kind of love with people who don't necessarily have it, and you know a lot of them don't. It seems like you come across a lot of people, and this is just coming off of what you've told us just in this conversation right now, but it seems like you have a lot of students that you really influence and really love you, and I use that word. They grow to love you by the end of it, and that's why they keep up with you. They text you. They say what's up. They let you invite them to Thanksgiving dinner. Most people wouldn't even respond at a point.
I think, I mean, I feel as rough as a child. I didn't have a rough childhood. No, I didn't. I had two extremely loving parents. And grandparents and extended family, and yes, they were crazy. Like I look back now and I'm like, oh my god, some of my uncles were nuts.
Whose family's not?
We all have uncles who are nuts.
We all have crazy, but I really felt loved. you know, and when I had my son, I felt very, very lonely, because when you're 16 and you're a parent, you don't have peers anymore.
Right.
You know?
Mm-hmm.
But my family, like, upheld me, and they loved me, and I mean, I just come from a family where no matter how tough, like, anybody acted, they were always loving. There was always an extra seat at the table.
Right.
You know, I was always stepping over one of my brother's friends that, like, you know, got kicked out and had to, like, spend time with us, or, you know, my mom would be like, oh, your friend's doesn't do Christmas, they can come to our house. Like, my family's very loving, and they do it through food. And, you know, I was very blessed in that way. You know, I really was, and I just feel like, we didn't have a lot of money growing up, but my parents made sure that we had experiences. So, I mean, I remember getting into the car being a kid and, like, driving to the city, and my dad would, like, point out architecture, and we would just go get cheesesteaks. Which sounds so cheesy now when I think about it, but at the time...
Literally, it sounds cheesy.
Yeah, it was so good. Like, my love of terrible food because of my father. And my mother, really. But anyway, like, the idea of just, like, doing things, going on adventures, and I feel lucky that I have to have that. I had that, and I try to do that. I try to do that for my children.
Yeah.
And I definitely try to do that for my students. You know, some of these kids, like, it's really important to me, really super important to me to get them to do things. I mean, my senior year of high school, after I'd already had Rain, I went to New York for the first time ever, and I got to go to a museum, and it was honestly life-changing. Like, just the idea of, like, leaving the state without my child,
Mm-hmm.
and going on a bus and seeing this exhibit just, like, opened my eyes to, like, all these possibilities. You know, like, my world was so small, and it was so compact with my family and this little tiny situation that I created, and then I went somewhere else, and I was like, wow, there's, like, a lot of other people in the world.
Part of my interruption, what
Yeah.
museum did you go to?
We went to the Whitney, and they have a show that every other year, it's the biennial, and it's, like, one of the most important art shows, and everything was, like, weird and abstract. And I remember there was a giant Jeff Wall photograph light box, and I remember there was this other artist that had hand knitted all these flowers, and she made this curtain, which sounds so cheesy, but at the time I was like, oh my god, that's so amazing. You know, it was, like, totally abstract and nothing I had seen. So it was just cool to be around the other art kids, because
Yeah.
I got kicked out of my high school when I was pregnant with my son. So I went to alternative school half of my junior year, and then I went to public school my senior year. And I met a bunch of kids that were into art, and I was in, like, the art program my senior year, and that's kind of what made me turn to art. So, like, being with these other kids and, like, talking about art and seeing art, like, how it was sold to me by my teacher, like, the most important show in the world. Literally, it still kind of is.
The biennial.
The Whitney Biennial.
And is that just one famous person's art show, or is that...
Well, so the Whitney is a museum in New York, and they basically curate it, and they'll have, like, two people that literally just look all over the world for what they think is the most cutting edge.
Okay.
And it's in my opinion, it's still like a really important show, but the last one they had, I guess, was last year. I was super disappointed in the work.
Why is that? What didn't you like about it?
Well, first of all, I went with Nathan, who, you know, is, like, such an art snob, and I don't know.
So you already have someone talking in your ear.
Yeah, well, it was weird. It was weird because a lot of it looked like the stuff that I saw being made when I was in college. So I was like, oh, like, we're still doing drippy paint, which I know.
Yeah, you moved on.
It sounds
right?
so elitist and, like,
things.
exactly what you would think an artist would say, but, like, oh, I'm so over that. But I still go. I still try to, like, see what's going on.
Right.
But those experiences are important for my students to have. So when I was at Ben Salem, my work husband Dan and I did a trip, two trips a year. We do one in the fall. We usually went to Philly or something, and then we did one in the spring. So we would go to New York in the spring. We went to Baltimore one year, just to get to do that. And then, as you know, I travel every summer with my students to another country.
So cool.
It was really one of those things, like, they sent me something in the mail at Ben Salem, and I'm like, did anybody do that here? And I said no. And there's this teacher, Lynn Jaffe, who's this awesome, amazing French teacher who retired last year. She's like, I think you'll really like this girl, Elena, who's, like, my best friend now. And we ended up doing a trip. And so this summer will be my 6th trip.
Wow.
With students. And in my new school in Philly, I already have a trip planned for next summer with them.
Really? Where?
Ecuador.
Going to Ecuador,
Going
yeah.
back
For those
to
of
the
you who don't
homeland.
know, Carly is Ecuadorian, very strong and passionate about that. Also Italian, right?
Yeah, I have Italian.
Ecuadorian.
So we're actually going to do a service project in Ecuador. We're going to work with women in the Andes And we'll know closer as to the as the trip comes around, what exactly we'll be doing with the women. We could be helping them build something. We could be working with children, but we're working specifically with women in the Andes and Ecuador.
So you were about, you've been doing these trips for a while, but you were about to give these Philly kids who probably have never even left the state, let alone the city maybe, who knows?
Yeah,
and you're giving them world experience. Not only are you giving them, you're doing a public service, you're giving them travel experience, exposing them to people they've never even thought of. Ecuadorians. What are Ecuadorians? I know Ecuador. It's somewhere on the map. Somewhere on the map. Is it in Europe? But now, now they're. I don't know. That's incredible.
It feels really good.
How do you
to do that? To do that for them.
How did you even get that started? That's a big project. Let alone Ben Salem. You started this six-year thing right now, ongoing and counting. This trip at Ben Salem where you're doing these service trips and art trips. How do you even think? How do you think of that? And then how did you set it up?
I didn't even know it was a thing, and I got a catalog in the mail at the school, and it really was just a matter of I called them. I'm like, can we do this? I asked a couple people. And they're like, who are you? I'm like, oh, I work here now. Hi, I'm the art teacher here. Yeah. And they're like, yeah, I guess. And
they're is it that time of the month already?
We just kind of marketed, and we just put up a couple flyers, and we had a pretty I think kids. I think some kids, especially in the suburbs, they kind of expect to do those things. And at the time, I think they did them before I got there, and they hadn't done them for years. And I just saw the opportunity, so I took it. So we went to, first year we did Italy, France, Spain.
Nice.
We did Costa Rica. We did just France. We did Peru. We did a service project in Peru. That was pretty awesome.
That's really
That
cool.
was I always wanted to do a service project. So we did that in Peru. We worked in they call them kindergartens, but it's preschool to first grade up in the highlands. We built walls. We built furniture. That was really amazing. It was definitely bucket list. But we did touristy stuff too. We did Machu Picchu, we did Cusco, we did all that stuff.
You can't just be for work.
Those couple days and spending with the little kids was pretty awesome. And then this summer we're going to Belize, just to kind of try something different.
Wow.
What are you gonna be doing there?
I don't know. I just want to get there, I guess.
Yeah,
it's all structured. I know we
Spontaneous.
do cave tubing. I think we go zip lining. We go to these islands, but I think it's just nice to. It just gives being somewhere other than what you're used to gives you perspective.
Right.
They just look different. When we went to Costa Rica, we were in the middle of the rainforest, and there's no air conditioning, and there's monkeys everywhere, and there's literally beetles and deadly those bullet ants. That could really hurt you if they bite you.
Didn't that happen to someone?
Yes, someone got bit in the ankle. We're don't wear sandals when we go to the rainforest. And
Really?
she listen. And she
Talk about an experience, right?
That's insane.
Murder. But everybody lived. We're fine.
Yeah, as long as everyone makes it back to the United States.
You come back to 10, you're good.
That's really awesome, though. I'd argue that traveling in and of itself is such a learning experience. Of course, school is very valuable, but just going to another part of the world, it's you learn so much so fast.
Mm-hmm.
Not only that, not only about the environment that you're in, but the environment that you come from as well.
Yeah.
You learn so much about where you just came from.
Well, I think when I realized how important that was, at my first year teaching, that kid that I had said that I lost touch with, that I was really close with,
Yeah.
no one would ever take him on field trips or to do anything because his behavior was so...
They just knew he was going to sneak out or do
He
something.
was going to do something crazy. So
Right.
I did this Chinese New Year project where they allowed to build dragons, and whatever team had the best dragon got to go to Chinatown for the day. And I was surprised because these kids, they take the L, they take public transportation, but they would never walk the 2 blocks to Chinatown.
Mm-hmm.
So it was a thing, we're going to go to Chinatown, we're going to sort of do a scavenger hunt, and then we're going to eat lunch together. And I taught them how to use chopsticks. That was the funny thing, because they were like, what? Chinatown?
What is that?
Yeah, so I just kind of threw it together.
Fun fact, Carly also taught me how to use chopsticks. So
Really?
So if anyone's looking, you should call her.
I am a chopstick expert.
That's awesome.
And when we were on the trip, and so this kid Tony had won, and he came with us, and we were on the bus, and we had eaten, and we had a good time, and he was fun, and he was and he looked at me, he's like, yo, Miss N, he's like, you're the heart of North Philly. Like,
the heart.
I was like, oh my God. And he goes, no one ever taken me anywhere. He's like, no one ever took me anywhere. He's like, this was so fun.
Dang.
And we didn't even really do anything fun. They just walked around Chinatown and just kind of like went into all the little shops with all the little things.
Yeah.
And then we had some like beef and broccoli, and we went home. It wasn't that deep. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
like, to me, it wasn't that deep.
For
but
sure.
to him,
for sure.
it was life changing. And then that's like, he totally got back on track, and then like graduated with all A's just from going 10 minutes into Chinatown.
Yeah.
So it was like, oh my God, I realized that what I take for granted as like little experiences or little things that my parents did with me, you know, there could be an 18-year-old that like never did that, or didn't have anybody that cared enough about them to take them out, or maybe their parents didn't know, or they're just, I was blessed to have really great parents at such a young age, or as a young parent that, like I had a lot of support.
Of course.
I think that's what goes back to what you were saying, is that like someone just gave them the time.
Yeah.
A
little
like,
time, a little attention.
That's all it was.
That's all people want.
But no, I mean, that moment that you had, though, you know what I'm saying, where he tells you, this is the first time anyone's ever done this for me.
I mean, it's like one of my proudest moments in teaching to this day. I mean, 9 years later.
That's got to be what I was getting to, is that's got to be the reason why you do this. It's for stuff like that, right? Yeah. It's got to be, not to be all stereotypical, but it has to be like those moments where you see someone change. I mean, isn't that like what learning is all about?
Yeah, and I think like as a teacher, you, especially with like really difficult students, you just plant the seed, and you hope you plant it deep enough, and you just hope that somebody waters it.
Mm-hmm. I like that.
And sometimes it doesn't get watered, but sometimes you're with them enough that you can plant the seed and water it. And that's pretty amazing. I would say, so I was an advisor at Ben Salem, and I was with the class of 2016, and I was so close to so many of those kids. I mean, to all of them, but there's probably like 50 that I still talk to on the regular.
Wow.
And I love them. I really
50,
do.
50.
I love
50
them.
from one class.
Like, I know, like, Rain makes fun of me, like, when I post stuff on social media, and I'm like, the only reason I get likes is because they're former students. It's not like I know anybody.
They're your, what would we call them earlier? What they
call
art
them? Babies.
The art babies. Yeah. They probably have a Facebook group.
Maybe, but, my friend Dave, who was an advisor too, like, we were just so close to them. Mm-hmm. And, they still, like, joke that we were, like, the mom and dad of the class. And, it's just really nice to see kids that were just sort of wild and unsure of themselves, right. And now they're all at this point they're all sophomores in college, and they're all like happy, and doing well, and there is that little part of me that's like, I hope that like I had a little bit
something
to do with that, and I hope that like they think of me fondly, and I hope that they pay it forward. I mean, that's like my thing to kids. I just say, if I did something, I'm like, just pay it forward someday. And I would have to say that whole thing that went down with me and Ben Salem, and there was like a board meeting, and like so many kids that I had no idea even really thought about me showed up to speak on my behalf, and I didn't ask them for that. And that was pretty amazing. Like, I mean,
you're very humble. If you don't think you're humble, I'm telling you, you're very humble, and that's a good thing. That's a very good thing to be humble. But yeah, I mean. Like, I know you would never ask for that, but the fact that you don't ask and you receive in abundance,
it was amazing. It was like what I would just say were one of the most difficult times of my life when I was like leaving us. Like I thought I would never leave Ben Salem. Like, that's how much I loved it there. That's how much I loved the kids. And when I was forced to leave, it was incredibly heartbreaking. And I know that sounds so melodramatic, but I feel like, oh my God, those are my. I feel like I had helped build this art program, and those are my kids, and now I can't see them through. Like, right on my way here, I was just texting a girl that's a senior that's sort of like working on some stuff, and she sent me a bunch of images and was like, what do you think of my work? And she's asked me this, and I feel so incredibly guilty that I'm not there for her.
Right.
But it is what it is,
But hey, I mean, like I said before,
I hate that I'm not there. I hate that, like, I feel like, even though it had nothing to do with me, I feel like I let them down. But now I have other kids that I love now, and I'm like, it's...
That's a difficult thing when you care so much, though. That's the difficult thing when you care so much, is just that, you feel guilty when you're not. But, like, you're still answering. The fact is, how many teachers go teaching year after year, don't talk to any other students after that. You know, like, they just don't build that relationship. You know, you gotta think about it that way.
Yeah, I think it's just art in general. You know, like, I it's the environment to, like, you can have those conversations. I'm sure it's harder to have deep, meaningful life conversations than to have Thanksgiving dinner with your math class.
True, yeah.
Because, you know, you're on a time, and you have to make sure you get through curriculum. You have to make sure they're passing these state tests, where I have a lot more freedom to sort of have fun with them. And I think some of it, too, is, you know, I feel like I did miss some of my childhood. You know, I had my son when I had just turned 16, you know, and I grew up really fast. And, you know, it's a way for me to sort of recapture my youth, I guess, is that I can still have fun with them. And again, I think my parents were that way with me. You know, my mom still, I mean, she's a little older now, but she was, like, so silly when we were growing up, and it was so fun. And she always, like, wanted to hang out with me and my friends, you know.
Yeah.
Did you let her?
Yeah. Like, I was never one of those, like, oh my God, Mom, leave me alone, you know.
Yeah.
No.
Like, you're not cool. Like, I didn't ever feel that way about her.
Just from talking to you, it seems obvious that a lot of what contributes to your success is not just the fact that you're a good teacher, but the fact that you've actually built an infrastructure for students. Like, you've built a kind of like a family model. You've invested so much into this, which leads me to my next question being, could you see yourself doing anything else at this point in your life besides teaching?
Mm-mm. And I mean, people even say, like, oh, why don't you go into administration and things like that? And I'm like, man, I'm just not ready to not be in a classroom. I'm just not.
Do you see yourself going that way eventually?
Probably. I mean, I would, what I'd really like to do, which is a goal of mine, is I would really like to teach teachers. Like, I would like to stay in a classroom, and I would like to work at a university level helping teachers.
With the art of teaching. Just how to reach students as opposed to the subject.
Yeah.
You should write it. How are you at writing?
I'm a terrible writer.
Really?
Good dancer.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah.
Catch her on the dance floor.
Yeah. I didn't know it's funny, I didn't know I was a good dancer until I started, like, going to proms and stuff, and I was like, I got better.
You're keeping up with
I didn't, like, do that stuff in high school. I was with a kid,
I can see you having dance-offs during senior
all the
prom.
time. I'm just silly. I don't care. I don't really...
Right.
I mean, you care about what people think about you, but not really. I care what my kids think about me.
And that's another way you gain respect points with kids, is you show that immediately, is that you're not somebody who, I must be perceived as an adult and a professional at all times.
I'll never grow up.
Good. You know, no one's asking you to. We're definitely not.
Yeah, I just don't see the point. I mean, it's, you know, you have one life, and maybe I'll come back, I don't know, reincarnate or something else, but I spent a lot of my 20s, you know, focused on being a mom and trying to be successful and making my son proud, that I didn't do a lot of things that other typical 20-year-olds did.
Yeah.
And I did that for him, and I don't regret that. I'm glad I did that. I mean, I would say that, you know, aside with my parents too, but the biggest influence in my life is my son. I mean, he made me go on when I didn't want to, which sounds so melodramatic, but that's really the truth. Like, I just really for a long time felt bad about myself. I was like, you know, which I'm sure a lot of young parents feel this way, especially women. Like, no one's gonna love me. Like, you feel tainted. People make you feel that way. And when I just always knew that there was somebody watching me, and it was him. So I wanted to make him proud. You know, like, that was always my thing.
That's awesome.
But so I like didn't have a typical 20-year-old like party thing. You know, when you have a kid, you don't go out and like party and then crash on someone's couch, because, you know, you have soccer the next morning. You go out, you're reasonable, you drive sober, and you go to T-ball in the morning. You know. So I feel like, all right, well, I did all the stuff I was supposed to do then. Now I can go to prom and act like an idiot with my students. You know? Yeah, he definitely, I would say Rain shaped me more than anybody. I don't even know if he knows that, but I'm sure he does. But.
I mean, from what I've seen, you've always been a good mom. He's a little hard-headed sometimes. Yeah, you know, you guys clash heads. And I feel like he just likes having the last word. Yeah. Which, it's just your son. It's how he is. He's a great guy. But that's just how he is. But even you handle those situations so well. I mean, I see it all the time.
I just know that if people aren't ready or willing to accept whatever you have, then you can't give it to them.
Right.
And I think, even kids are, like, not even my own son, but, like, even students, like, they want you to tell them to do the right thing, and it's like, I can't really tell you what's best for you. I can show you that there's all these options, but, like, you have to be your true self.
I think that's the ultimate lesson in school.
Yeah. You're allowed, and what I find with a lot of my, female students is, like, I think sometimes they feel like they can't be a lot of things.
Why do you feel like that?
There's just a lot of pressure in society, I definitely felt that way. You're not allowed to be smart and beautiful and funny and athletic. I actually had a boss tell me that once.
Oh, really?
Yeah, when I was younger and cuter, she was like, it was another woman that just wasn't happy in her life, and it was when I first got together with Nathan, and she was like making work really miserable for me, and she's like, well, why do you think you deserve to be happy at home and at work?
What?
You need to pick one. And I remember it, like, that really stuck with me, and I was like, I don't have to pick anything. If I want to be happy in, like, every aspect of my life, I'm going to be that way.
Well, that's definitely a window into how she views her own life, That's more of a statement about herself.
Yeah, I guess she didn't think it was fair, but then I also felt like, you don't know what I went through.
Of course.
You know how many terrible boyfriends I had before
I
ended up with this guy,
Well, you've had to overcome a whole amount of things, obviously, just from the little that you've revealed. And that kind of builds more of a tact for you to deal with happiness in a state of mind. You said that you went through something in your life that was so hard for you that the only thing that got you through it is knowing that you were working on a greater good, which was your son. And, it's been proven time and time again that people who are in situations of desperation, what gets them through it is the fact that they're working towards something bigger, something greater. So obviously you can hear what that person's saying, it just goes out your ear because you've already learned that lesson. That person had yet to learn it, which is why they said something like that.
Mm-hmm. I feel like I got through whatever happened in my life for a reason, and I don't want to waste it.
Right.
And I feel like, especially now, 2017 was a very difficult year for lots of reasons, for personal reasons for me, political reasons. I'm pretty liberal, so I feel really upset about what's happening in the world right now.
Yeah, healthcare. Not healthcare. I'm in the healthcare field. That's why I said that. Education is changing. There's a lot of changes that are already being implemented. Can you talk a little bit of that from a teaching perspective?
Like a
Betsy DeVos and what she's doing to education as a whole.
Well, she doesn't. In my opinion, she doesn't understand education. She's not. The only thing, like I said, she saw schools as a profit center. She opened up tons of schools, basically bankrupt the public school system, and her students were not any more successful than the public schools.
And she did this in which state?
Michigan.
Okay, so. And
she also donated millions of dollars to Republican campaigns. It's a business for her, and at first I felt a little bit bad for her because I was like, I do feel that way. That's just my nature. You got to give everybody a chance, but I don't want to give her a chance. I don't think she deserves to be there. I don't think she has kids' best interests at heart, and I think that's just like a really upsetting, disturbing trend in education in general. There's this hierarchy, and the students should come first, and then the teachers, because we're the people caring for children, and we're the people delivering the information, and we're responsible for a bunch of human beings every day. We're responsible to make sure they're safe, they're happy, they're learning, they're discovering themselves, they're being adjusted, more so than parents at this point. That's how it feels anyway, and it just feels like the system's upside down, the bullshit trickle down stuff that never ever works. If we have the best superintendent and we have a really good school board and we have all these really high paid administrators, then eventually they'll get to the kids. But I always feel like the kids are the last part of the conversation.
Well,
I don't feel that way at the school I'm at now, though.
That's good.
I feel like they really uphold the kids, and they really, really do a good job of treating teachers like people.
Yeah.
I really have noticed this trend even since I started teaching. That it really feels like everybody hates teachers.
Oh yeah. Well, it's tough out there for a sub. That's one thing.
Yeah, but I it's just well, why aren't you teaching our kids this, or why aren't you doing this, or it's just, that we can't do anything right. And it's like, well, what are you doing?
Do you agree with the shift that a lot of people claim it's a generational shift, that early on in education it was the students that were always blamed? You should pay more attention, you should be more respectful. And now, as we get into this age, the nuances, it's all the teacher's fault.
I think what has to happen is there just has to be a partnership. There has to be a partnership between the home and like the teacher and the student. It has to, I mean, I feel like students have to know that the goal is to get them to be independent and happy and free thinking,
right,
to grow up to be a healthy adult. Mm-hmm. And that is not ever the message. It's, you know, I've been in meetings where parents have like freaked on me. And I'm like,
yeah,
well, lady, what did you know, like, where were you? Mm-hmm. Like, you have not checked your kid's grades in 6 months. Like,
right.
You know, I mean, I'm sure Rain will tell you, like, I checked every day like a crazy person.
Yeah.
And even with my daughter, you know, she has this, I talk to her teacher once a week just to check in, just to see how she's doing. And I ask the teacher, what can I do at home to support my child at school? Is there anything you need from me?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
You know, and that, I don't think I've ever had a parent say that to me in 10 years.
Well, that's the appropriate response. I feel like maybe a lot of the underlying frustration and anger that is directed towards you as the teacher is more of a perspective into, they know that they're not doing the right thing.
Yeah. It's like, well, what do we pay you for? And I'm like,
right.
Well, they are your children.
Exactly.
Like, it's not just a service. Like, this is
you're
this
not
is like
a nanny.
Yeah, this is like a whole thing. It's not fast food. You don't like
course.
order a burger and then get the burger. Like, your child's an individual. They need certain things. Like, I know it's not, believe me, it's not that fun to do homework with your kids.
No. Especially if you know way more about it than your kid, you know.
Yeah,
it's tough.
You know, even my 6-year-old, she has homework every night, and that's fine. But sometimes she just really can't focus, you know, so it takes twice as long, which is fine.
Yeah.
But it is, you know, after I've been at work all day dealing with 100-something other kids, it's a lot to sit down. So I know a lot of parents, you know, are feeling that like, oh my gosh, just get away from me sometimes. Like, go on your tablet or it's never play outside, unfortunately, but like, go do something else. And I understand that, but you still have to do what's right by kids. I mean, the way kids are viewed in our society specifically, it's really upsetting to me. Like, the idea that children are always charged as adults for things. Mm-hmm. Like, what? Their brains aren't even developed. Yeah, you know, this attitude that we have towards kids is wrong.
Yeah, I always think about, like, you know, whenever somebody is charging a kid like for something an adult did, like, did that person really do nothing wrong when they were that age? You know what I'm saying? Like, it's like they totally take that experience that they learned when they were 17 and they throw it out the window completely. Yeah. They're just like, oh, that they must be held responsible. It's like, my man, you probably took a candy bar out of like Wawa or something like that, but you know, you don't even think about it.
I think what happens too is that everybody does become protective of their children for the wrong reasons, you know, too. Like, if your kid does something wrong, they kind of have to, like, I don't like the term man up. I hate that term, but like,
own up, is that
own
a better
up?
one?
Yes,
own
yeah.
up
They have to like
one.
own up.
What is the wrong reasons? Like, being protected for the wrong reason. What are those reasons?
To pretend that your kid didn't do something wrong. I think
right.
To like pretend that they're this perfect thing.
Yeah, like nobody's perfect, and I think if you never allow your children to make mistakes, they never learn from them. If you protect your child from everything, and I feel like I maybe did that a little sometimes with my son, and I feel like my parents did that with me a little bit. Like, my brother and I thought we were untouchable because we were so loved, and our parents like did everything. Like, it's like the joke between us. We feel like we were too loved.
Yeah, I mean, I make that argument with myself sometimes. You know, like, I had it really good at home, but like sometimes it's just like you don't want to do stuff, but you have to.
Yeah.
But just like you're so used to being loved and having people care for you that it's hard to do those things sometimes.
It's also that idea that I could screw up and I would still be loved and I could still come home and I could still do things.
So there's less of an incentive because it's like, I have this love to fall back on.
But there's also, like, my parents are so loving that, I mean, I would never blame them for being pregnant. I don't mean it like that, but I just like in my little brain, I was like, kind of like didn't think it would happen to me because I was a good kid and I was loved. You know what I mean? Like, I was just super naive as to how the world was. I forget why I even said that, but
no.
I just think like it's really hard for parents to admit that their kids do something wrong, and kind of watch them suffer from it.
Mm-hmm. Well, it's a sign of bad parenting because, you know, if you were dedicated to changing that behavior, you would immediately be like, I know he does that. Like, I can see my kid, because that's a result of you being around your kid a lot. You know what I'm saying? It's like, I know for a fact he does that. I've seen it.
Right.
And, you know, it's really eye-opening when they deny it, because it's like, how much time do you spend around your kid? It's like, you have to know that has to be a common issue. Like, let's not.
And I think it's like, look, so my husband will be like that with my daughter. You know, he's super, super protective of her. And I'm glad, you know, and so am I. But sometimes, like, I'm like, no, man, you just, like, got to give her some space. And it, like, drives him crazy to give her space. You know, she's frustrated. I'm like, but she has to learn to, like, sit with that frustration and build the confidence that she could figure it out. Because I feel like that's what my 20s were. I just kept screwing up. And I had to, like, figure it out and deal with it. And then I realized I was strong enough to get through things. And it made me who I am. And I don't regret anything now. But I feel like it's because I had to deal with it. You know, and I think kids and parents now have a hard time just like owning up and facing things and dealing with things. And I think it kind of comes back to like the idea of computers and like everything's immediate, right? Everything. Like, I'm bored for 2 seconds. I'm going to look at my phone. I'm going to play this game. I'm going to check to see what everybody else is doing instead of worrying about what I'm doing, instead of having a feeling and sitting with my feeling and feeling uncomfortable and realizing that it's okay to feel uncomfortable sometimes and I can get through it. You know what I mean? Like, there is and I do it. I'm guilty of it. You know, like, like I said, I'm uncomfortable. I don't want to talk to that person that's begging me for money, so I'm going to put my earbuds in and pretend I'm listening to music. So I don't have to tell them, no, I don't have money.
Yeah, what's on Instagram? You know? Like, let's just look at Instagram for a few hours.
Well, nowadays we have a zero tolerance for awkwardness. We just don't have. I mean, socially, we've been awkward creatures. That's just how humans are. But nowadays, like, we just don't have any tolerance for a silence or a pause. For us, it makes us feel as though like we're acting in an inadequate way. So we compensate exactly like Ryan said. Like, we have to shift our focus immediately. You know, instead of learning to take that in and deal with it.
So I think that is like a little bit of a generational thing. Like, I definitely noticed the people that I talk to on public transportation are always older people. And I actually just read this interesting article about somebody that his wife was Danish, so he like moved to Denmark, and people there, they're just like, they thought he was just like too much, because he would say hi every time he passed somebody in the hallway at work, or he would like talk through lunch. And then his wife was like, you know, like, you don't have to do that, man. Like, that's not our culture here. You know, like, if you say hi to somebody, you don't have to say hi to them 5 more times. Like, they get it. Or you can sit in silence and eat, because that's really what everybody wants sometimes. Everybody just wants everybody to be quiet and just like eat.
Silence is gold.
Well, you've done a lot of traveling. You see how different it is in those places, you know? How social and accommodating they can be.
I mean, I would say Americans are super addicted to their phone, and I'm guilty too.
Japanese people too.
In other countries, you don't see it that way?
No, not as much. I feel like everything's slower. I mean, everything really is slower anywhere I've been, even in like major cities. You know, when you're in Paris, you sit and you get a crepe and you sit there and eat and you get the coffee, or you know, and you just sit there for a while and you just like, and the tables you just kind of look around and take it in. And same thing in Italy, like like it takes forever to get the check. And like, if you ask for the check too soon, they're offended. They're like, why do you just want to eat? Like, they don't really have to go coffee in Europe.
I have
sit
family
and you drink
there.
it.
It's an American state.
Yeah, and I can't imagine not taking my coffee on the train. And then like I used to feel like kind of weird about it. And then I was like, no, I am American. I'm going to take my coffee on the train with me, because that's what I need to survive. You know, like, I don't want to wake up at 4 just so I can like enjoy my coffee. That's not what I do.
It's true. That's how it's done over there.
Well, they're not like up at ungodly hours either to go to work. You know, they kind of they're like in Spain they still take siestas, and they don't have dinner till 10 o'clock at night, and that's kind of awesome.
That is kind of awesome.
Wouldn't that be nice?
That's what I'm saying. I'm done. I'm capped by then.
I know.
Can we go back real quick, because you talked about, you know, you obviously are a big advocate for education, especially women's education. And you talked about it being different between guys and girls. So can you talk a little bit more about that?
Sure. Well, let's say about that. Yeah. Well, I would say that where do I start? So
anyway,
in my experience, I've encountered mostly male administrators, and most of them were former gym teachers. So you had to think about too, education, like, right, I work with teachers that are as old as my son, and I work with teachers that are as old as my parents. So there's like all these generations of people working together. So it's like, it's really strange. And sometimes I think, and from what I've witnessed, like older teachers don't mean to not call on girls, but they do treat them a little bit differently. And it's upsetting. Or I've been in meetings where I've been the only woman, and I don't think the guys mean to be rude all the time, but they will cut me off constantly. Or they feel threatened by strong women. So like all those things that we see happening now in Hollywood or really everywhere, it's everywhere. And like the sexual harassment stuff. I mean, that happens in schools too. And I just don't think that, I don't know. Well, I guess what upset me the other day is that I saw like a bunch of articles pop up with teachers like trying to get with their students. And then they kind of try to equate like what's happening with all the men going around with like female teachers, or just like they're predatory and they're like preying on their male students. And I was really upset. Like, really? Oh yeah, I was really upset because that's what the 2 articles I read were trying to spin, that like the same thing happens in schools with like female teachers and male students. And I was like, what? I was like, what is it? You know, I was really upset. And I don't know why I do this, but I got into it with somebody online. And because it was like a male teacher was with a student, and like this other person that was online was like saying that, well, it's all the student's fault. And I'm like, well, no, when you're an adult.
Not at all.
So this male student was with a female.
No, it was a male teacher with a male student. But
okay.
But the student was 17, and like this student was like, no, he's a good teacher. Like he didn't do anything wrong. And I'm like, listen, man, I love my kids. I love my students. There's never once in my life that I've ever was like, yeah, he looks good. Like that's that's honestly never crossed my mind.
Right.
Like I can look at a kid and be like, oh, they're a good looking kid. Just like I would be like, Ryan, you're a good looking kid. You know what I mean? But I'm not like, hey, Ryan, you know, like so creepy and weird and gross.
The bottom line is, at its core, that's super manipulative. And there can never be a time really that the student is ever blamed for it, unless it's a rape. Like that's the only exception.
Yeah, like there's just
by the student on a teacher or a staff. That's the only time it can ever be turned. You know, you're dealing with a young person whose mind is in its formative stage. That's why they're in school. They're subjective to ideas. You know, and people who subject ideas like that, you know, are at the peak predatory. It can anybody who tries to win that on a student just doesn't understand, you know, the function of academia, I guess. But it's weird.
That makes me think of the whole Kevin Spacey thing that came out, and I forget. He was like 14, one of the kids that came out. And this is the dude that apparently is being blamed for House of Cards being off the air now. Like, people are mad about that.
It's Kevin Spacey's fault.
House
of Cards not there.
It is actually, it's his fault.
But basically, he was saying that, you know, at the time I was 14, and he was dating this other dude he was dating his cousin, which is, you know, really fucked up. But that's kind of the thing. He's dating his cousin, and his parents found out and kind of put it under the rug, and were like, all right, like, you know, he's not gonna go near our son anymore. Like, we'll kill him if he does. But other than that, you know, we're not gonna break up this family. We're not even gonna break up this family for molestation. You know, that was the mindset. And you know, here he is now dating Kevin Spacey, and he goes, I just felt so powerful. So I felt so powerful. Here these older men wanted me, and I didn't see anything wrong with it. He's like, I was mature for my age. You know, I knew what I was doing. But he said, you know, 10 years later down the line, I realized just how much I didn't get. I didn't understand why these men wanted me. And, you know, I think that goes a lot for, you know, teachers hitting on students and those kind of relationships. Like, you're basically molding them and convincing them that you're like what they need or what they want in that way, when they're not even fully developed. They don't even understand what their feelings are.
Well, I brought that up because I would say that I feel like in the media it always seems to be like a female teacher and a male student.
Right.
But in my personal experience, it's usually the other way around. But I always feel like girls are sort of taught that it's like it's shameful if something happens to them.
No.
And they sweep it under the rug, or they just accept it, or they take certain things. Like, I had a student teacher last year, and I was in a meeting, and I was the only female, and there was all men. And when we left, she was like, "Oh my God, I don't know how you didn't freak out." And I'm like, "Why?" She goes, "They didn't let you finish a sentence." She goes, "They interrupted you 50 times," and she was so mad for me. And I was like, "Oh, I didn't even like." Part of me I didn't even realize, because I am so used to being interrupted all the time. And I feel like that happens to, like, I've had tons of students say that to me, that's their experience in classrooms, or I don't think sometimes teachers realize like what they say too can carry such weight. So even if it's like a joke,
Right.
like it's like there's never a time for a racist, sexist, homophobic joke, ever. Like never. You know, like as a teacher, like
as a teacher,
like
yeah.
like if you're in a bar and it's like your best friend, yeah, like
if you're an entertainer and you're in an entertainer realm, of course, but in professionalism,
yeah, like there's
especially with children,
yeah, like and I had students be like, this teacher said this, and I'm like, I you know, and it's actually like a hard position to be in because
yeah, I bet
you don't know how to. I don't always know how to navigate that. You know, I want them to do the right thing, but they don't want to be embarrassed. Because there's like so much shame that comes along with it.
Well, not only that, they know that like there's going to be a lot of questioning, and that's the thing that makes students feel uncomfortable because now you're put on a pedestal and it's just question after question. It's like, I don't want to be under a magnifying glass right now. I'd rather just slip out. But the thing is, when they slip out, the damage just gets worse. They don't realize that.
And I don't think that, like I had that happen to a student, and she felt very uncomfortable, and they seriously questioned her and made her retell her story six times. And she was like, she's like, I wish I never said anything.
Yeah.
And I was like, yeah, but you know, and I just tried to encourage her. I'm like, I think you did the right thing. Like, you know, you just like have to like say your piece and like
stick with
it. But it's just like, you know, there's like it's the trauma. It's trauma over and over and over and over and over.
Trauma of repeating your story and reliving your story over and over again. And then on top of that, there's all these people being like, you're a liar. You know, like there are people like that. It doesn't matter what the facts are. It's that they had a relationship with this teacher. This teacher's a good guy to them. This teacher would never even think about doing something like that. But here you are, one girl recounting her story 6 times, more and more detail as it goes on. Then, you know, if someone's brave enough, the second person, third person might come out. I mean, that's what's happening in Hollywood.
I think that, yeah. I think when last year when that whole like Trump pussy grab thing happened.
Oh wow, yeah, that something?
It stirred up a lot of things for me as a woman, and thinking about back to like when I was really young and vulnerable, and I had just had rain, and I had encountered like something had happened with one of my bosses. Yeah, and it was like literally a pussy grab, and
actually,
yeah, and I was really upset about it, but like it was either go to work and keep my job and put food on the table for my son, or like cause this big stir, but I need him at the job. And he flat out said to me, no one will believe you anyway. You have a kid. So everybody knows the kind of girl you are. So I was like, and at the time I was like, he's probably right. No one will believe me anyway, because I was labeled. So I think that's,
How old were you at this point?
I was probably 18.
18?
Yeah, so Rain was 2. I was at a restaurant. Okay. I don't even remember I could probably pick him in a lineup, but I don't even remember his name. But I just feel like there's so many women, especially like my age and older, that have like tons of stories like this. So it's, as much as it's making people uncomfortable, and I think it's a good thing, and I think it's a good thing for young girls to see that like we're just like done with this. We're done with, because there's nothing worse. Like I've always said this, there's nothing worse than thinking that that somebody sees you as an equal, and you think they respect you, and they respect your ideas as a person, only to come to find out that they just thought you were a piece of ass, or they just like kept you around because they thought you were cute, or whatever it is. And the older I get and the less cute I get, it's like more frustrating, because it's like, my God, I mean, I there's certainly a lot of people that are much smarter than me, but I'm not an idiot, you know, and I just hate that it, like, I feel like a lot of times in my life, no matter where I've worked, it's like a lot of times it's just gotten reduced to like my cup size instead of my brain size. So I feel like sort of on the down low with a lot of my female students, we've sort of had those difficult conversations, because a lot of my students have felt comfortable coming to me first, because I have an open atmosphere in my room. That's cool. Where they'll stay after. I'm very open with, students that I trust about my past and things like that.
That's dope.
Can you, I mean, I know this goes deeper into just like male, female, and just like schools. I mean, you told me a story once about going to this girl's award ceremony because her parents didn't really, because of their culture, they didn't see it as significant, as important.
Right.
Can you talk a little bit about like that end of it?
Yeah, I think if you really care and you have the time, because you can't, I mean, I've definitely been guilty of putting students before my own children, and I have to stop doing that. if kids really want you there, I think it's important to see that you care, you know, so you just kind of show up for them when they need you, if they ask you to.
That's pretty much it.
Yeah.
That's what it comes down to.
Yeah, but I think that's just like a human thing. I think you could be any person in that situation, no matter where you worked. If you're like, I feel like I'm a decent person, and if I'm available, I'll do that for whoever.
Right.
Because it feels like, I mean, I feel like I get more back when I do that than I'm giving. It's not really that big of a deal. But now I'm also super extroverted. So I get energy from other people, where my husband, he would feel totally drained. Yeah. You know, when he's like we were out all day yesterday with our friends. And we were down at Penn's Landing, and like today he's like, I'm not speaking to anybody. Like there was, you know, it was like everything was like sucked. All of his energy was sucked out of him. So, but I would be like that for any student, no matter what they look like, no matter their gender or whatever. You know, you just sort of. But I think that's what's kind of nice about being a teacher, especially like at Ben Salem. I mean, I encountered every kind of student.
Oh yeah.
Every kind of student,
and it was all types.
It was pretty awesome, and I think that was the power of the art room too. Last year, I had so many different kinds of students. You know, I had a student that has transitioned from female to male. I had a student that was an immigrant. I had a Muslim student. I had you know, a very openly gay male student, like any kind of like stereotypical, like it almost looked like a joke, like they picked one from every culture, every religion, like every race background. Yeah, it was totally like that. And it was like they didn't really talk to each other at the beginning, and then like the Thanksgiving feast happened and they were really close, and by the end of the year they like had a group chat and they were all like giving each other feedback on their work, and they like really became good friends. And I think that if they had not experienced that in my class or in elective classes in general, they wouldn't have got to see another side or another culture. And I think it just like really opened their eyes and my eyes. And it's just like, even though there's so much hate in the world, there's still like these little pockets of beauty everywhere. And I think a lot of times you can find them in the classroom.
Well, that's the classic dichotomy when it comes to teaching, right? Where you're giving so much information, but you're getting so much back involuntarily. Like that's the thing that everybody says, but you know, that right there is the proof in the pudding, I suppose.
What strikes me the most about that story, about everyone getting, you know, becoming close, is just the one who had a sex change. Like that's incredible.
Yeah.
I mean, that's so misunderstood, especially today. Like we just don't know a lot about it. You know, there's so many arguments about whether, you know, it's a brain issue, or they were actually born a male and it just like something got messed up, or like, you know what I mean? Like, no one really knows what it is, and it's hard. What I find is it's hard for people to accept things they just like we can't comprehend yet.
Right.
You know, I feel like, you know, with gay rights, there's a lot of people becoming more accepting to it, but that's a whole other field in itself. You know, I think that's fascinating that those students were so open to it. Like they just look past it.
Well, I had like most of the students I had for 4 years too, so they kind of grew up together in my classroom. So they were just more open to seeing that. And I think that's where a lot of like bigotry and racism comes in, is that they just aren't exposed to it. I mean, I can't like one of my best friends, Rona, I was just in her wedding, and she's married to a woman. And I just feel like, oh my God, if anybody saw those two together, how could they ever think that they don't belong together? Mm-hmm. No matter what it was. You know, and I just feel like maybe if more people just put their phones down and talk to people that didn't look like them or sounded like them, they might have a little bit more compassion, because I think when you humanize things, it just becomes easier and better. You know, I mean, I'm really big on, especially with Clementine, you know, like she's in a pretty diverse school, and I just want her to meet different people, and it's like, I want that to be her normal, and then she can make her decision. I want her to understand different religions, because I want her to be able to choose when she's older. You know, I try to guide her and not like force her into things. And the way I parent her is different than the way I parented Rain. And it's just because I know better, and I have experienced different things. I mean, it's really weird to be a parent in two different generations, with different ideas and different research and different brain research, and how you go about kind of, and I feel bad. I always say that I feel bad for Rain. I'm like, I made so many mistakes with him, but I learned from that and I corrected it, and now I'm like a different parent to his sister.
But you can't go back.
No, and he's never you know, sometimes I actually feel guilty because I'm like, man, she gets so many things that you didn't, but it's just like, you know, before we met you, like the two of us were in this tiny apartment and we joke it was like the ramen noodle years. That's what we call it. Because it was just the two of us, you know, and I tried to hide those things. Like, you don't ever want to tell your kid you're poor. Mm-hmm. You know, it's like embarrassing. We'd be like, hey, we're going to have candlelight dinner tonight, so we're going to be fun, and you make it a game. But it was like, I didn't want to tell them, like, I just made enough money that day, or they shut the power off and I had to go get it like turned back on the next day. You know, like you don't want to tell your kids those things. But I don't have to do that with her. Right. And I have a partner with her. Mm-hmm. So it's different.
No, that's really cool. I mean, it's just pretty much showing that you kind of have this understanding of what your kid is thinking, which is important. But you also have an understanding of how you want them to turn out according to their age, which is even more important. A lot of people don't understand that.
Yeah, I mean,
side note, how are we doing on time here for you?
Oh, I don't know. I don't even know what time it is. Okay. I'm okay, but...
All right, cool. It is 5:55, just letting you know.
Oh, okay. I told him I'd text him when I was ready. So.
Okay, cool. But is there anything else that you want to cover that you'd like to say that maybe we haven't asked you about or talked to you about that's really, I don't know, something that you're passionate about, something that's weighing on your mind? I feel like I said it all. Yeah, I mean, I guess I would just say for anybody that's listening or watching or whatever you're going to do, I would say get involved. You know, try to stay, like, as a parent in a school, or even you guys, like, try to see what's going on with your school, like your local school, how you can get involved. I mean, I think that this past year, there's been like a big shock to the United States and, you know, politics and stuff. And I feel like it feels kind of hopeless. But like for me, being like connected to schools, like schools are the heart of the community, and like just to try to get involved and see what's going on and try to support like your local schools and your local libraries and your parks. Because I just feel like if everybody was doing that and not so worried about themselves all the time, if they're worried about their community, even if it's just like a small community, it would just be better. You know, things would just be better. Because I'm not like a, you know, I don't bash the United States. Like, we have some serious issues right now. But I do see there's like a lot of selfishness, and that really like breaks my heart, because I feel like there's so many good people in our country that just, if they just did like one little thing a month, or they like pulled together, like that small little ripple will turn into like a wave, you know, like make a difference. And I feel like now we're just at a crucial point, especially with young people, like they're starting to feel a little bit passionate about politics and what's going on if they just get more involved. And I guess I would tell people to follow their dreams. I mean, I know it's so cliche, but I think you have to do the right thing for you, and you have to, whether the money always works itself out, I think. So I'm definitely proof of that. I'll never be rich, but I'm rich in a million other ways. So it's a powerful thing to say. Seriously, that's probably the defining line of this entire episode.
Well, good thing we ended with
it. Yeah, I guess we are in closing. Carly, I just want to thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for being with us.
And your honesty, really, and just your transparency about talking about how you feel, which is not always easy. So I want to thank you first and foremost for expressing that. It's really cool.
Thank you.
And I'd love to have you on.
And I'll be seeing you more often, I'm sure.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. You're always welcome to. I'm actually a good cook.
She does. She makes tacos. Her tacos are unreal.
Yeah. Unreal. I can't sing, but I can dance and I can cook.
Yeah, you can dance and cook.
Yeah. I'm half Italian. I mean, come on.
Oh, that's awesome. Yeah. No, but I really do want to say thank you, and I'd love to have you on in the future, to see the progression of what you're doing and your experiences that you're having with the kids and the stuff that you're building. I'd like to see how it looks in the future and how it's changed from this episode. Hopefully this episode can act kind of like a staple for you, where you look back on it and be like, wow, like this is what was going on at that time, you know?
Yeah.
So
I would say, like, my goal for this year is to just, like, I've acclimated to my place now, and I'm just trying to be more sensitive to the cultures of my students, and then trying to bring those things to them. So
yeah, that's all anyone can ask for.
Yeah.
Ryan, you want to say anything in closing? Are we good? We out?
No, I think we're out. Thank you so much again for being on our show, and we'll catch you next time.
We're wrapping episode 21. Peace.
Thank you.